Contracts are always done for the rainy weather. When you are signing contract, you may be borderline getting married, but you want to put in contract everything like you're hitting each other, want to murder each other, right? But on the personal level, I don't say going over the line, inviting them to your house, but they are people, right? They're doing job for you. Yes, you're paying them, but they're people.
I know from experience that hiring a marketing agency is a tough decision. But if you work long enough in marketing, you're gonna need to make a decision. You're gonna need help with content, with SEO, with design, you name it. And an agency helps you in an instant to give you a team of experts to kick off some projects while your in-house team is focusing on what they are good at or while they are growing their expertise. And throughout my career, I hired multiple agencies. Sometimes it was a good partnership, it worked, everything was fine. Sometimes it was a total disaster, and that's why I'm very excited to be here today to learn about this topic. Kick off for this discussion. Can you give us an example of a marketing agency that you hired before, like a partnership that really worked and you saw a huge ROI, you saw a great benefits after hiring it?
I can give you an example. I actually remember to this day. It was 3rd October 2013. I was working for Google Canada in Toronto. And literally the day before our biggest announcement ever, Google was just announcing its first ever phone. We found out that the only baseball team in Canada got into the finals. So I'm reading the news, and literally the match is on the same night and the same time as our event, right? You can imagine how Toronto looked. The white and blue flags were everywhere. There were literally people fighting for the last tickets. There were fights in the streets. There was police on horses everywhere. And I was panicking. Like, I was running from left to right, figuring out what we will do, because in the morning we invited journalists, and for the evening we invited influencers. And just for your idea, it was the event itself cost almost $1 million. And the collaboration, the launch of the event was $20 million in paid media. So I was panicking, and I was literally expecting to get an email the next morning that, I was fired because nobody arrived. And I saw a person from agency. I unfortunately don't remember the name, but I saw a person from agency on a phone. And because, I couldn't think about anything, I was listening to his phone call, and he was literally ordering pizzas. And then he was calling to Best Buy to find TVs. And I was so angry with him, because I thought he's preparing for a house party. That he's inviting people to build a house party at his event. Then what I found out is that he was actually turning out our party, our announcement party, into a watch party, right? So fast forward the day after, last people are leaving around midnight, half of them drunk, half of them fully stuffed with food and pizzas. Everybody rated it as the best event ever that they attended, right? The score was 4.94 out of 5, right? The dream score of Uber driver. And I think very often I personally look at ROI of agencies as sort of a number to put in. But in that one moment, the person sort of put into work the experience him and his agencies accumulated over 20 years. And he later admitted to me that every time they're facing a crisis, they're like, okay, so we have an issue. The issue is that usually the people visiting the event want something else, or something else breaks, so let's give it to them, right? And I, in no word, could come up with it within the 36 hours that was remaining. So that was probably the best of all. Purely by rating, it was the best event that I ever participated on working on. It was the best event that, I ever had the luck on working on. And in that one moment, the agency paid every single dollar that we paid them in fee. If I knew what they were to pull from their sleeve, if they would ask for double, I would have given it to them if I knew, that this is going to happen. So,
yeah. I think for me that tells me two things. Number one, that you actually choose a right agency. I think this is a very important part of the success of this partnership. But the second thing as well is a trust. If you can actually trust them to make the right decision at the right time, the decision that you you yourself might not be able to make, just because you don't have the same expertise that the agency has, because like they accumulates a lot of experience, not from one person, but from multiple people into one place. A quick introduction about Jan Gemrich. It's a little bit difficult to make it quick. Honza worked for Google for about 10 years in Canada, and also here in the Prague office. If you still remember Google Plus, that was a brother we had. He was responsible for promoting that in Czech Republic.
That tells you I'm a very successful marketer.
Yes, maybe it's really everywhere else, but not in Czech Republic and Slovakia. But he was also responsible, like he was the head of marketing for Google Play and the whole of CEE in Central and Eastern Europe. And in Canada, he was, as he was mentioning, like as he was head of marketing for the hardware of Google products, so Google Chromebooks, Google Pixel, and Google Home. And right now he is the CMO of Gamee, which I hope you're gonna tell us a little bit about that. But my first question actually is not coming from myself, but from a friend, Martin Svoboda, who actually is he's working at Google. And when I told him that I would be interviewing Honza, he told me, yeah, I need you to ask him a question. How's it like not working for Google?
Okay. Thank you very much. For any future inquiries, please address them to Leo, my PR manager. Clearly, he can describe me much better than I can myself. Martin, thank you. So this is my first time I left Google. So I left Google twice. I left, then I came back, and I left again. Always on my own will. Maybe the third time they will kick me out, who knows. Honestly, when I was leaving for the first time, or on the second time, I wasn't really thinking about it because I knew what I was getting into. The first time I was mostly thinking about the benefits, like I'm going to miss the benefits because obviously it's a very comfortable place. In the end, what I miss the most is the people, right? The individuals and sort of the culture. So I don't necessarily think that obviously Google with its unlimited pockets, it's easy for them to hire world-class talent. But in the end, I think it's the culture of the company that I think it's really nice. It's empowering, it's like a safe space where you don't feel that, any mistake will get you fired. I had a moment where I accidentally burned $150,000, like literally by a mistake. And I got a message from a VP of Google, which was like 6 levels above me. And the message literally said, "Thank you for the summary. Please don't do it again, Thomas." And I'm like,
let's jump to the time being. So you're the CMO of Gamee. So what's in Gamee and what are you doing there as the CMO?
Without necessarily bothering you with boring details, we are a small gaming studio, which focuses on hyper-casual games. So that's the type of games that you would play for 5-10 minutes waiting on a bus. We recently started focusing on blockchain gaming. So for the past 2 years, we have been developing what's called blockchain or crypto or Web3 games. I came there to build, and now I lead the marketing team. So it's about 11 of us right now. My goal is to, make sure people love our products, and we have a lot of them. And not the products, the people playing them. So yeah.
Nice. All right, so let's jump into marketing agencies, and I would like to start with the objection. I had that experience before going for usually the CEO saying, "Hey, we need help from a marketing agency in that specific field," and the main objection that usually comes from the CEO before the cost, which another objection, but before the cost, usually they come and say like, why not invest in our in-house team? Like, why give that to an external agency where we can build the experience of the team in-house? So, how would you answer to that question? And do you think that company can benefit from working with an agency without sacrificing the growth of the in-house?
First of all, I personally believe that such a reply from a CEO is coming from two places. First one can be objective, meaning logic. He or she, she doesn't want the company to stop growing. The other part and the other reason, in my experience, very often can be emotional, right? Because the bigger the company, the more important the CEO, the more important, the company, well, the status. So that's, I think, where it's coming from. Now, addressing the emotional part can be very dangerous. It can lead to very painful discussions, and I would not go there unless you have training in negotiations or something, which I don't. On the objective part, depends on what stage the company is. I think if it's a small company, and again, I don't want to say what small is, in some industry. If you're a car manufacturer, small is until you have 10,000 employees. In gaming, small is 10 people. Actually hiring an in-house person is, can be super expensive because you might not leverage the person full time. You think you might need the person, but then you hire a video designer and you only leverage 50% of their workload. And then what do you do with the rest, right? Then obviously the question is how you define the difference between marketing agency and a contractor, because technically a contractor could be a marketing agency of one and you can hire them for 50%. The other reason is obviously you can learn from those people, right? It's some agencies even offer two types of, and I found it really smart. Some agencies offer the type of work where they do the work for you, or where they are their when they are your consultants. Funnily enough, the being consultant usually means you have to do the work, and they even charge you more, but they know that eventually they will use your business because they are teaching you the craft. Right? So those are to me the two biggest things. The last thing is if you are a really big company, and I have an example of one Czech company, I don't want to name them, but one Czech established company, what they did, they found out that they had a online marketing agency for mostly performance media, really conversions. And they found out that they are technically employing 17 people on the side of the marketing agency. They were such a big client. So at one moment they decided to build a team internally. At one point, they actually found out they built such a big team internally that they are not using the capacity, the issue of the videographer. And what they did is they actually spinned off those people in a separate company. The company became an agency, which primary focus was to serve the client, and the rest capacity they resold to the market. So they sort of went around it. But obviously that takes time, and it's applicable for big companies. But from the start, agency actually can be cheaper. And then the second thing is the knowledge, right? So,
yeah, I think one thing that companies don't think a lot about, that the time that it takes to onboard a person, and this definitely a cost. And can take, depending on the position, that can take 2, 3, 4 months to actually the person to go up to speed and actually start producing the kind of work that you want to do. And in that sense, actually, the agency can be way more effective, more cost effective. That's one part of it, but the other part is the value that you are getting. At the end of the day, again, they have the process that they implemented in different companies, which whoever you're gonna hire might not have that expertise. If I have a company right now, when do you think I should hire an agency? What triggers the need to hire an agency?
I personally think there are two reasons to hire agency. One of them is you need somebody to do job that you don't have time or capacity to do. So it's potentially something that you can do, but you just need to externalize it. Or the task just became so big that let's say you have a paid media. We are in that situation. We have a paid media manager. He has the skill to do the things that we need, but he just doesn't have the time. And we just decided not to build the team anymore. We sort of use him as an external expert, and he's leading external agencies who work for him, for us. The second reason is expertise, right? Which I think is very often, how many companies are big enough that they can host an in-house events team. And usually you do have events manager, but by events team, I mean a specialist on venues, specialist on catering. That's usually unthinkable. So almost always when you are organizing event of a certain size, you go for external partner. So again, I think the two reasons, very binary, is either capacity or the knowledge. It can be, in ideal scenario, it can be both, right? In ideal scenario, you sort of know that you could potentially build it internally, but you don't have the knowledge. And as you're saying, right, bringing an agency is much faster. Also, if you choose the right agency at that point, you don't necessarily have to care about scaling. So if you suddenly come to an agency and you say, you know what, we want to double your business, usually they're happy and they just start scrambling to deliver, and they do. While internally it means, oh, I need to hire 2 more people. And, in current market, I don't know, but it will take you a couple months.
Definitely. And so if you do take that decision to hire an agency, what are sort of the steps that you need to prepare yourself before actually going outside and start searching for an agency? Is there some specific steps that you think the company, or at least the department, to prepare at the beginning?
I think there are many, but the sort of two that come top of my mind. The first one is like realize what is your budget, right? Are you paying the agency, like is the goal you're hiring the agency because they will do it cheaper? Is the idea that the agency will do it better? Is the idea that they will do it faster? Because in the end, you might be in a situation where you need to produce a video, right? Tomorrow is a speech of CEO, and then just last minute told you, oh, by the way, I need a 6-minute video which highlights the wins of our company. And at the point, money is not an issue. What you're fighting for is the time. So you have a different budget. So every time I think you go to agency, or either you're picking an agency as a sort of RFP, or you're going to already existing agency, I think the question is, what is your budget? Like, with what is the resource you're fighting most for? Is it the quality? Is it the price? Is it the time? Those are usually the free ones, but maybe there are other. The other thing is, I think, really the scope of the agency. Even before you start like thinking about who you might hire, it's like, what is the scope, right? And I think that's more, not just for the specific agencies, but I think it's a strategic decision on which specific skill sets or more areas of business you want to keep in-house. And I think that comes to personal opinion, experience, and the type of company. I, for example, based on my experience, would never outsource social media content creation and posting to external agency. Not in the industry I'm working on. Maybe if you work in automotive, where the chance that you have a surprise announcement of a car, it's very rare, right? Usually the cars are in making for 3 years, and you can start posting preparing everything very much in advance. While if you're working in an area like blockchain, where things change day to day, you just need to be more flexible. And depending on the type of the agency, either you have and again, I don't want to generalize, maybe there's a cheap and flexible agency. I haven't met them. But either you have cheap and expensive agency, which means they tell you, do you want our social media manager to be available to you until 2 a.m.? Then you're going to pay for them. Or, our office hours end at 6, and then whatever happens until 6, we have to wait until the next day. So then what's the question? The CEO takes over the Twitter channel. And even if you are the car company, and I don't want to diminish social media agencies, we use them for paid promotions and so on. But even if you are a car company, what if something happens in the night that you can, capitalize on, right? I don't know how many of you remember the blackout during Super Bowl, which in Czech Republic is not very famous, right? But Super Bowl, arguably, and by that I really mean that people argue, the biggest sports event in the world, electricity went out for 50 seconds, whatever. Panic, people screaming, tripping over each other. And the social media manager of Oreo, they said, and they have the phrase, you can dunk even in the dark, meaning you can eat. He literally posted in the 50 seconds, he posted, oh, you can still continue dunking in the dark. So, and you can't, that with an agency, how much trust you would have to do social media agency, what they will call you with approval, can you approve this tweet by the time the lights are on, right? So going back to it, I think you need to decide, it's not just about the budget or the money or the currency. It's not only about, the expertise of the agency. I think it's also about which types of skill sets are really crucial to you. They're part of your, not just your competitive advantage, but part of your company NDA that you want to keep inside, and which are the ones you're sort of willing to, give away and let them do somebody outside.
And I think also one thing that actually helped with me is deciding how long do you want to use the agency. So as you said, for example, if you are going for some events agency, okay, you know that you're going to use them for that specific event. But if we decide we're going to go for a social media agency, is the plan to actually hire them a long term for 5-6 years? Or no, we know that we just need them for 1 year. And in that case, we know that we need to, as you said, for example, take the learning from them. We want to pay for the learning because we want to do this activity for the long term in-house. So I think deciding how long you're gonna be using the agency, I think that definitely can help you in that choice, how are you gonna choose them, who are you gonna choose, and also in the negotiation with it to be prepared to what will happen after the agency actually.
Yeah, it's also then you completely differently structure the contracts and so on. So yeah.
How would you go about finding that agency? But again, especially right now with everything is remote, you can hire an agency from anywhere in the world, right? Yeah. So the choices are virtually unlimited. So how would you research them?
I have never really, we talked about this a little bit before. I have never really like used any other channel for finding agencies than, searching online and then looking either directly for the references or asking for references or like asking for recommendations in the surroundings. When it comes to geolocation, I think that really depends on what type of event or sorry, what type of activity you want to do with the agency, right? Because the things you need to consider is the price of the agency. So when I was working in Google Canada, we often hire for visual work agencies from Czech Republic because they were willing to do the same thing for half the price than the Canadian agencies. And that already meant that they are pricing us 50% more than they are charging the Czech clients, right? So win-win. But because the time didn't matter, right? In some agencies, like if you are to go for social media agency, I cannot imagine them being in a different time zone, right? Maybe 1 hour, but then what if they are working from Sydney? They might be the best in the world, but it's useless. And the other thing is the more like a cultural expertise, right? If you are, for example, selling something which is very country specific, like, I don't know, let's say brand manager for Lucina, I don't know, I haven't seen, obviously, okay, you have cream cheese abroad, but Lucina is Lucina, right? And if somebody says Philadelphia is Lucina, I know people who will go for fight. So you probably don't want to hire a German agency. You might, maybe their expertise is worth it, but you need to weigh the benefit of them being so good versus you spending 6 times more onboarding them coming to Czech Republic, doing research with people, understanding how they feel about Lucina, what is Lucina, why people hate when it comes in the soft package and it's crumpled. So those are sort of the things that I would consider.
You sort of mentioned that they want to dig deeper into it. Yes, they go on and do the online research, but you're going to end up with, let's say, 20, 30, 50 possible agencies. What are some of the criteria that you can go to shortlisting before actually approaching them? Like you already mentioned that due diligence, culture, and so on, but are there like some, like, would you go, for example, and see how big is the agency? Like, this is a criteria.
No, definitely size. And also, I sort of said it jokingly, but I personally had a bad experience with this. If I open agency website and the first thing it says we won Low-Skáček 16 times in the past year, I'm like, thank you, no. Because you're not showcasing the client's work, you're showcasing how good you are at winning awards, right? Okay, if they show it in a way like this is the ad we did and it won some awards, great. But if it just says this, I'm like, no, right? Because literally what it says, like, oh, sorry, but like that, I mean, you might be fine people, but the way you present yourself, egoists, right? Like you talk about the awards you won, not about the work. The other thing is definitely size. It kind of also goes to the point of like which agency you can afford, right? There are agencies that I always wanted to work with. And even in Google, they sort of, were outside of our budget for the particular work, right? In ideal world, the bigger the agencies, the bigger the expertise. But at one point, it just doesn't make sense. So what's your balance between, the expertise the agency brings or the speed of work versus the budget versus the size? So you can filter very easily, right? If you're going to be doing a campaign where you need to develop just social media assets, like promotional carousels, you probably will not go for BBH, which is arguably one of the 3 biggest creative agencies in the world. So
yeah, and once you actually start speaking with some of the agencies, what are sort of the main questions or the main things that you're looking into while speaking with each agency?
If it's an agency I want to work with for agency of record or on record, which I want to work with for 5 years, like in-person meeting, even in times not that long ago, I would really demand that, because I personally believe that if you're going to work with agency who's 100% quality, whatever the ratio is, but you only have a 20% likeliness that you're going to sit with them on a beer and be able to talk with them, and then on the other side I have agency who's only 80% the quality, but I really have a personal sort of emotional fit with the owner, with the people, I would always go for them. Because I do have past experiences where we hired the best agency by paper, by case study, but we were not able to speak with them, right? And then we were running into like, you start feeling it, right? It's not just about how you feel about them, but how they sort of get the emotions of your company, your DNA of your company, right? Are you like hardcore software as a service company, everything's in cloud, everything's in online, and they keep sending you Excels attached to email? I mean, it's a small sign, but they're clearly on a different, brain length than, you are operating. So for me, all these signs. So again, I think there are objective criteria. We always did a case study, like, RFP. We sort of pitched event. They prepared the event. We let them present it. We ask questions. All those things are pretty standard. But I think what's very much underappreciated is the human factor in these very early discussions.
Like, I mean, I very much agree with that. I had that experience multiple times before, and yeah, like if you have a problem in the communication at the beginning, it will remain. Even if you are just speaking with a salesperson, and after that you're gonna be speaking with a different team, it's still like if you already have this problem in the communication from the beginning, this sort of culture fit, we can call it, this will remain.
And by the way, following up on that, one thing you don't want to do, or again, sort of coming from my own mistakes, you don't want to be bamboozled by the CEO only to end up with the account manager that's in your eyes useless. Not judging anyone, sort of, it's always about personal experience. But like, it might be nice if all the presentations, everything's done by CEO, only to be sort of, you signed it with the CEO, but now you are being sort of here with the junior assistant account manager to the account manager, and that's your day-to-day contact that, you were sort of expecting. So that's one question we always ask, like, who's going to be, like I want, from the very beginning, on every meeting, I want to have the team that would eventually, deal with us day-to-day. If you don't know, then bring us examples. I mean, it sounds kind of inhumane, but you don't want to just talk with the CEO.
It's very important to meet the actual people that you'll be working with to evaluate how you actually like working with these people. In general, are there something that you always insist, okay, I would like to have this agreed upon before we start working?
One thing which agencies sometimes hate, which means it's usually good for the client, I'm sorry if there's anyone from the agency here, is agreeing that the payment is as much based on performance, not on delivery. And what I mean by that, it's not based on we will do a tweet, anyone can do a tweet. But let's say, okay, 70% of your payment will be based on the fact that you will create it, but the first 30% is based on the growth of the account, right? So only if we achieve certain engagements on those tweets, right? Because that's anyone can create a tweet. The same way anyone can create an event. But then the question, what's the happiness, right? So we, for example, had with one agency, it was agency on record, so we work with them ongoingly. And in their case, it was always that when we were doing event, from their total, first of all, their total fee was only payable after the event, not a single dollar before. We paid them everything which was real expense, like pay a venue, pay catering. We gave them all the money in advance because we felt it's fair. Like, why would they pay for us? But in terms of their fee was all payable only after it was finished and after we did evaluation. And 20%, I believe, I don't remember exactly, 20% was like a guest rating based. Not the number of guests, that's kind of, hard to, but the guest rating, right? Because they know for who they will be building the event in advance. They know it's going to be for C-level. They know the market, like all those things they know. And they have to evaluate themselves, like, we know the audience good enough that within this budget, we can create an event, which is awesome. Obviously, there might be things like content and so on, so it cannot be 100%. But even with agencies in areas where it's not common, having a performance-based part, it can be done.
When you are dealing with an agency, do you consider them as an extension of your internal team?
As long as it's possible, like, you should treat the agency as a business, right? But on the personal level, you should have as good relationship as possible, right? And if it means, and this is from a personal example, right? If it means that, you're gonna call your agency at 4 p.m. on Friday, which, isn't working hours, and you say, look, I'm presenting on Monday, but I need to prepare all weekend. Is there a chance you're still gonna like visually clean up the slides for me? And the person on the other side, because he has a good relationship with you, he says, you know what, I would love to, but my daughter, she has this evening thing. And you say humanly, you know what, I'll do it, just go for your daughter's stuff. Then very likely if you're gonna call the same person on Sunday, or Saturday, 6 weeks down, and they say like, I screwed up, this video is not working, I broke it down, can you fix it? This person will get up from the lunch and go fix it for you, right? Not because it's in the contract. So I think on a company level, it's a contract versus contract, right? And my friend, he says contracts are always done for the rainy weather, right? So you might love each other when you are signing contract. You might be borderline getting married, but you want to put in contract everything like you're hitting each other, want to murder each other, right? But on the personal level, as long as you can make it as human as possible. I don't say going over the line, inviting them to your house, but they are people, right? They're doing job for you. Yes, you're paying them, but they're people.
Like, I think that's definitely a mistake that a lot of people do, and I did this mistake myself. And when I was working with a PR agency before, the agency was not performing, so like they were not delivering what we agreed on, what we expected from them, and I was becoming angry. And at some point, the CEO of the agency came, see, look, we are not gonna continue the cooperation. Just our team are not like, they are not encouraged to work. They don't like working out anymore. So like, the part of it was a huge mistake from my side, and I learned it from that. Like, looking at this human side, like when you're with the people working in the agency, consider them slightly the same as an employee inside the company. Like, you need to motivate them actually to work with you.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky enough that I had a colleague who told me that before the agency decided. But I generally think if you're dropping agency as a client, there might be hundreds of reasons. But if agency dropped you as a client, it's very rarely because of the money, because they structure they are in the business longer than you. They know how to structure the contracts. They have contingency. So it's usually that it doesn't work on a personal level and you're burning through their team.
So maybe to fix this problem from the beginning, how do you approach onboarding the agency?
Yeah, this is a loaded question. We agreed on this one. One thing which I have done in every job where it was possible, not just job, every team where it was possible, where we started working with a new agency, or sometimes it was just that it was agency that the company was already working on and they started covering our team. It was, I don't call it onboarding, I call it immersion, right? So for example, when we were launching the phone, we literally invited agencies from San Francisco, from New York, from Toronto in our office. At the time, we were at the luxury. We said, look, we're going to cover your flights, come in, you're going to cover your accommodation. And we did not 24 hour, like a full day immersion, which literally means in the morning, we gave every one of them the phone, not gave, borrowed. We said and we showed them what the phone can do. And then we sort of send them in the afternoon for scavenger hunt in the city. And in the evening, we went for dinner and we evaluated who had the most points and they won some prize. Actually, I think the team who won, they could keep the phones. It's very different when your agency is just an agency and when your agency becomes an ambassador, right? I was just talking I was on a training last week and I was talking with the person who leads Bohemia Chips for the entire Central and Eastern Europe. He leads 1,500 people. And he says what they do with their, I'm not sure agencies, but partners, is they take them to the factory. Right? Not just the products. They literally, they said to new partners, we send them a full pallet, like hundreds of boxes of everything we produce. So they see how broad it is. Usually they are quite angry because the reception are come pick it up. Can't you send it up? No, it's too big. Come pick it up. And there's 60 kilos of, chips and nuts and stuff. But the other thing is that they show them everything. They show them how important is it to pick the potatoes. They tell them things that are interesting, but nobody knows. Do you know that we actually have producers that produces only for us? And they have contractual NDA. Can you imagine a potato maker with an NDA because he cannot tell that he makes potatoes for the other company because these companies are stealing secrets. Oh, he has a better potatoes. I have a better potatoes. And they do them full tour, right? And I'm saying that's exactly what you should do with the company. And I think everyone can do it. It's different every time, but for a company who sells online business, it might be that they join support calls, right? It might be that you sort of show them the magic. You bring them on a meeting with the client one by one. You pretend they are a new employee. There's so many things you can do. And I think that the deeper the immersion, the more you create really ambassador feeling on the other side. And again, for event, 3 months, maybe not worth it. But for agency that you ideally want to use for 3-5 years, the best investment you can do at the very beginning. You also eliminate shitload of questions from them because then they will not ask you oh, do you also do this? Well, we know they make nuts because we received 16 kilos of them. And we know the camera is pretty good because we are taking pictures in the dark, right? So
building on that, if you do have multiple agencies, would you connect them together?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. No, yes. No, the answer is yes. And until 2015, I would say that I will only do it for non-competing agencies. But I actually found out it can be done even for competing agencies. Again, they will not like it, but that's the part of the business that you as a client, that's the part on I think above the human relationships, right? The fact that the CEO doesn't like it, that's a different thing. I definitely think you should, right? As long as you can do, and again, it depends what type of business you do, but if you really trust your agencies, and I don't think you shouldn't be working with one you don't trust. I always love the moments where somebody tells me, "Oh, we're working with something secret. It's a new release. Nobody can know about this. Our agency is preparing a campaign. Like, do they know about it? Not yet." I'm like, what are they working on exactly? I mean, yeah, we share with them that it's gonna be car, but do they have like visuals? No. So what do they know? It's gonna be a car. I'm like, and they're preparing a campaign. That's gonna be an amazing campaign, right? Because it's so secret, you don't even trust your agency. And yes, there might be leaks, but then why would you work with them? So yeah, definitely bring the agencies together, connect them. One thing which I found out is that, again, if you sort of make it on a humane level, like you do a kickoff dinner, or you do once every 3 months or once every half a year, do agency dinner, right? That's like, it depends on how many agencies you have, but it doesn't necessarily have to go in thousands of crowns investment. Tens of thousands. You actually found out the agency, sometimes they solve things behind you without you even knowing, right? Like you have a visual agency and you have a production agency, and they just start exchanging the files that have been already approved without you. Again, depends on the trust, depends how you set up the relationship. One thing which I learned from the media team, which is the in-house sort of media spending team at Google, which I found mind-blowing, and I've been telling everyone since. So if you heard it already, I'm sorry. You're gonna hear it again. If you think about it, if you're launching a media campaign, no matter the budget, you're usually spreading the budget across multiple channels. TV, depending on the size, TV, out-of-home, radio, print, and then you go to digital and so on. Imagine that you have two agencies for this. You have a traditional media agency, so somebody who manages TV, out-of-home, print, radio, and then you have a digital agency, right? Depending on your type of the business, you might be spending 80-20, 20-80, 50-50. And usually what is being done is that you sort of split the budget based on historical experience, based off internal plan or whatever. And you say, you know what, you will get 1 million crowns and you will get 4 million crowns. Now build your campaigns. Now imagine if you go to them and say, you know what, our budget is 5 million. You spend it between yourself, but it needs to work best for us. The first time I said it to agencies, like there was a silence in the room for 20 seconds. They were literally looking at me like it's a joke. And when they realized the joke, it was like the moment where I wanted to start screaming, like, you can't do this, while realizing I'm the client and they can't. But in the end, we forced them to do this. And what happened is that they actually had to work on the background, splitting the budget between the channels, while obviously knowing they have fee on top of the channels, but they had to split it in the best interest of us. So what's funny about this approach is that in the end, what you will come out is almost exactly what's perfect for you, because that's the only objective measure how they can justify the split of the budget. And since then, every time I had it, I was like, every time I was somewhere, I was saying like, we cannot have one agency for online and offline. Let's have two agencies and let's pitch them against each other. Pretty cruel, but it works.
It is, and I'm curious, was that your idea?
No. That came from a much smarter people who, like, we literally had person who, the only thing his job was like to buy media on Twitter. And in that team, there was a person called Avinash Kaushik. He's like quite famous in these circles, and he came up with this idea. I think there's a lot of CEOs of agencies who hate him, but he's really good.
It's definitely brilliant. Things don't always work, right? So when would you make the decision that, okay, this is not working?
First thing I wanted to say is that even when you are working with agency that you like working with, I would encourage anyone to do regular re-RFPs, meaning it depends on the time. And for example, in the companies where I was before, they did it sort of organically when the team decided. Some companies, from what I heard, they have it regularly. So for example, some companies even do it every year. That I found quite insane because it's a big workload for the team. But if you are a company like Škoda and you're spending with your media house 200 million crowns, every year just in Central and Eastern Europe, then re-RFPing them every year, meaning like opening RFP and inviting them back in, I think it's sort of necessary. What I think is interesting about it is very often for some reason I sort of found out that the people don't want to invite the current agency. I'm like, why? I mean, they know everything about us. Well, that's their key benefit, right? You should realize it, because if you hire somebody else, you will have to re-explain everything to them. So it's just fair to invite them. Very often the current agency might come out the best, maybe not for the price, but maybe they will only be 1% more expensive than the other. And then you realize you just rather pay that than, explain something to somebody completely new. So that's one thing. In terms of why to end the relationship, well, obviously there might be what we can humanely and sorry for my French, you can call a fuck up. Like they do something which is simply unforgettable, right? They leak your phone, and while it was a human mistake, purely contractually, just cannot work with them, right? It's just, sometimes it's literally that, like, sometimes they leak a phone and it hurts other partners who are working on it. We had that, and then they just have to be let go, not immediately, because that sometimes causes more damage than help, but they have to be let go. Sometimes it's the length of the relationship. I usually don't, I don't think there's like a objective scale, like annoyance metric. If there's more than 6 out of 10, they need to go, and if there are 8 out of 10, it needs to be expedited process. But I think it depends what position you are. But I think if you are directly managing the agency, it's good if you ask from time to time your employees, like, do you think they bring you more value than they sort of cost you time? Or if you are directly managing it, it's sometimes good to sort of look in the mirror or even ask other people every 6 months, how am I describing the relationship with the agency to others? Do I come from every meeting and, like, then maybe not working? Or they just say, it's like normal. Sometimes you complain, sometimes you don't. But so I don't think there's an objective measure, obviously, except for, big screw up. But I think it's sort of the best measure is sort of the mental, again, not objective, but mentally, how much you feel that they are sort of saving you time versus burning your time. Because in the end, agency always has to save your time, right? So
Great. And maybe like a small part about approaching this decision. So, or you already did that decision. How would you approach it? Would you, for example, give them another chance of then, hey, like, I don't like how things are going. I am considering ending this partnership, and then give them another chance? Or would you, okay, it's not working, let's end this?
yeah, I think it comes to like to any negotiation. One of the rule of thumbs I'm trying to follow is that when there is a good news, tease them. Like when you are announcing something good to your customers, like, oh, something new is coming, it's going to be exciting. If it's a bad news, just rip the band-aid. And at the point where you really make the decision, I think there are 2 things you need to decide. You yourself, I think, have to be very well convinced if you are like fully 100% decided, or whether you came there to potentially have a discussion. What if they say, what if you lower our fees by 50%, right? You might be decided, maybe, that will switch you. So that's one thing. The second thing is the timing. And at the point, I think it sort of goes above the personal relationship. I think it goes to the company versus company. You need to time it in a way that it hurts your company at least as possible, right? You need to think about, is it a super small agency, just 2 guys? If I tell them and I say at the end of September that I will finish working with them and end of December while I look for another one, maybe they will say, you know what, we don't want to work with you. Like, we will not, and then you're screwing yourself over. Or is a big agency where you sort of know that they will continue delivering the same quality because they just cannot lose they cannot risk the reputation damage.
All right. So before we jump into questions from everyone, maybe do you have some final comments, something I forgot to ask, and you want to add any final remarks to improve first choosing an agency and also like working with the agency?
I don't think I'm that smart to come up with something that hasn't been asked, but the one thing which I personally think improve my life when working with agencies the best is to try to really treat them on a human level. Yes, they need to deliver, but the good thing about agencies is if a person, like if an account manager is not delivering, you don't need to solve it with him. You can go to his manager, right? While with that person, you can maintain a human relationship, right? Like, think about it like, companies are companies, but on the other side, it's not part of, agency A that's sitting across you. It's Peter, or it's, Nadia. So that to me helped the most. Again, only go as far as you're comfortable. For somebody, it means you calling them by first name. For others, it might mean that you invite them for Sunday barbecue, but like treating them as people. Like, in the 11 years since I've been using agencies, it never backfired on me, never. And maybe I was just lucky. Maybe there are sort of assholes walking around just waiting for this to happen, but it never backfired to me that I was like nice to them. It's kind of like the biblically not turn the other cheek, but it never backfired to me that I was nice to them, like a human to them. Never.
Great. So thanks a lot, Hamza.
Thank you.